Selection Committee Chair Chris Reynolds, thank you so much for joining us. Let's start right at the top with the teams that were in consideration for the one line. You've got Alabama, you've got Houston, you've got Purdue, and you've got Kansas. Was there any other real debate about anyone breaking through into that discussion for the top line?
Well, the committee, we spoke in depth with regards to those four teams, and there really wasn't any other team being considered. There was great debate about the order in which those teams would be on the seed line, but there were no other teams considered at this point in the season by the committee.
And with what you said on CBS, basically it came down to Alabama versus Houston for the number one overall seed. And for discussion purposes, was it a true tiebreaker? Bama beats Houston, does so away from home, and that was really the clincher here?
I would say that certainly played a large part. However, we certainly take into consideration the total body of work. And when we match up the resumes, and we have 12 committee members and everybody gets one vote. And so we discussed it at length along with Purdue and Kansas as well. And by the time we ended up the conversation, Alabama was in the top spot.
I want to ask you about a couple of Pac-12 teams. You've got Arizona, 6 overall. You've got UCLA, 8th. Now, Arizona is 6-2 in quad 1. It's 3-1 in quad 3, so it's got the quad 3 loss. UCLA has no losses outside of quad 1, so the resumes are certainly up for debate. What ultimately led to Zona leapfrogging UCLA, so to speak, and not even doing it by just one, but by 2 spots there on the 2 line?
Well, we just looked at the quality of Arizona's wins and the way they scheduled in the non-conference. And quite frankly, when you look at those that on the seed line 5 through 9, it was razor thin. I mean, it was by whiskers. And so, as we stated earlier on the show, this could change in 48 hours. But as of today, this is where we would have these teams seeded.
What teams were the most hotly debated from 1 through 16, or even if some might not have made the cut? If there's one or two you could take us into the room on that maybe generated the most discussion, what were those teams, Chris?
I would say when you get beyond the 1 seed line, we had a great deal of conversation with regards to Tennessee. Certainly Creighton. There were some conversations as related to those that did not make the top 16 because, again, when you got to numbers 14, 15, and 16, and those that were mentioned that did not make the top 16, it was razor thin. And so there wasn't a great disparity between those teams.
When you look on the outside, the teams that did not make it right now, Creighton, Miami, St. Mary's, Yukon, real quick, were those the 4? And was that in order? Creighton, Miami, St. Mary's, Yukon?
We didn't provide an order at all. We just provided them an alpha order. But we didn't want to provide those teams in order based upon our conversations. We just wanted to focus on the top 16.
And what about the Big 12? Let's wrap in talking about them. I think you've got 5 Big 12 teams, not even just in the top 16, but in the top 12. Were there any challenges for the committee when it specifically came to bracketing those teams and for the purposes of this February reveal, Chris, placing them in the proper regions? Give us an insight and our viewers an insight into how the committee landed where those teams were and how you went about placing them.
Yeah, Matt, it was pretty simple. And so when you think about the seed list 1 through 16, Alabama being the number 1 overall seed, they get the opportunity to choose where they want to be. And so they chose the South. Houston went to the Midwest. Purdue goes to the East. That's based upon geographical location to the site and that campus. And so for Kansas, the only place left on the 1 seed line was the West. And so as relates to the other Big 12 teams, as you know, Kansas State is out west as well. But they're last on that seed line. And so that was the only place for them because the position right in front of them, Iowa State, they had to go east because that was the only place where there wasn't a Big 12 team. And so when Iowa State went east, Kansas State had to go west.
It certainly is setting up for a very, very fun March. Chris, thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate you. And we will see you again for the big reveal in 3 weeks on Selection Sunday.
Thank you for having me, Matt.
Do you want a sports network that delivers everything that matters about the game? The highlights, the picks, the instant analysis, no yelling, no fake debates, no politics. Hit the subscribe button and never miss a moment.